those of you who got an invite, welcome to Nerd Prom.
No matter where in the world you are, we're all Nerds International. With the hyphen.
The Murder Hobo Show presents.
Sit yourself down, take a seat. All you gotta do is repeat after me.
ICRPG.
1, 2, 3.
ICRPG.
1, 2, 3, baby, you and me, girl.
All right, if you're still here after that sweet intro I just sang for all of you, let's get into this bad boy. All right, everybody.
Hit the button, Gary.
I hit it. I got the waveforms. We're not going to get 5 minutes into this and have us realize that that we're not recording. That said,
Again.
Welcome to the Murder Hobo Show ICRPG special. I've been talking for the last couple of minutes, and then I realized that Victor wasn't saving his audio, so we've had a bit of a discussion here, and we're going to start this bad boy over. Victor and I have been doing the Savage Rifter podcast now for a couple of months, maybe June, July, something like that. I think we started. We're 8-9 episodes into it. And as we have these conversations outside of the Savage Rifters podcast, he's mentioned to me a few times about this really cool system that he's played called ICRPG. And it's come up a few times and I didn't really pay any attention to it. And like I said, well, you didn't hear it, but like I said before, I don't know what the straw was that broke the camel's back, but I decided to go and invest in this. I saw it somewhere. It looked really good. And I went and picked up the PDF. The PDF is 192 pages of pure goodness. I'm shocked by how simple the system is and by how many cool little mechanical, unique ideas are in this system. It's really slick and really fantastic. Victor, how did you come across this? Like, where did you find this at?
You know what? I've just been really fortunate. I had managed to find Hankerin on YouTube many months ago, over at least a year ago or so, maybe a little longer than that. He had a YouTube channel called Drunkens and Dragons, and I managed to come across it looking for, different playthroughs and other GMs and other people that have created YouTube channels to be able to, talk about gaming, talk about RPGs, how to run a game, how to, make that craft a little bit better and be better at what I like to do and what I like to play, of course, role-playing games. And next thing you know, I'm watching the 6th episode, the 7th episode, the 8th episode, and he's going through all these great little things, these little nuggets of gold like timers and how to use threats and different types of challenges, like what is a barrier and how can you have your players walk a tightrope. And next thing you know, he drops a bombshell on everybody and says, hey, ladies and gentlemen, I've created Index Card Role-Playing Game. Check it out. Here it is. I'm putting it out there. Go to the Google Plus community. Go to the YouTube channel. I'm going to talk about it some more. And he went full bore. I've been riding that wave. Literally, I've been riding that wave ever since. I was really lucky in the fact that he allowed me to be a part of the initial play test for Last Light of the Red Sword, which is one of the adventures for his Warp Shell world that he created to be able to play, to be able to use the system in a sci-fi type game. And honestly, I bought the PDF, I think the week or so before that. I ordered my printout book, the real book, not more than a few days after I bought the PDF. I play tested it, and within 10 days, I'm all in. Literally, like you, I went in and bought all the different index card packages that he sold, all the different types of mini characters that come with it. I was looking at all the different simulators at Roll20. I was looking at how he was creating his games and what he was doing, the mechanics of it. His game and his ideas have changed the way I play role-playing games as a whole. I have not had a system impact me like that since Savage Worlds back in when I first played Savage Worlds, when it was Deadlands Classic now. And that says something, because I've been playing games since around 1985, maybe a little before that. So to have someone come along and one person write it, produce it, make it, draw it, play it, post it on YouTube, and do all the work and all the stuff that comes with it, absolutely changed my game. And if you haven't checked this out, you guys need to check it out. It's absolutely a fun blast to play. It will, if you've been playing games for a while and you're looking for something that's light and easy and quick and doesn't take 14 hours to go through rounds of combat with multiple combatants, you need to play index card role-playing game. And if you're looking for something for so you can get first into the story and not have to worry about all of the system rules and everything else that's slowing you down, you need to play index card role-playing game. If you're looking for different backgrounds and different worlds to play in and you're tired of playing all the ones that you've seen before, you need to take a look at the index card role-playing game. I may sound like a salesman. I may sound like someone who's making money off of this. I don't make a dime off of this game. I simply absolutely think it is the best thing to hit the markets since Numenera.
I am 70 some odd pages in through the rule books. I've been reading at work when I have chances, like when I'm waiting. Today, I got this job about 1:00 and I had to go wait on site for an hour while they finished building the forms to pour my concrete into. And I was just reading it as I was sitting there, just getting into it and stuff like that. And it's so cool. Anyways, this is just going to be me and Victor talking. There's going to be no bells and whistles. We've rolled in. We're going to hit the intro, which we've already done because I'm going to do it in post. And there's going to be no fluff, no buff. This is going to be me and Victor just sitting here shooting the shit for an hour. Completely non-PG, which we try and keep the Savage Drifters podcast PG, but this is the fucking Murder Hobo show, not the Savage Drifters podcast, and we're gonna probably gonna be pumping out maybe a few curse words because
yeah, it's gonna go south pretty quick here. It's not gonna take long. Okay,
so I just have questions, and I don't want to just outright ask the questions. This is a bit of a review on the ICRPG as well, and to me, this is new shiny toy. So, Victor's been playing with it for a while.
I know you're chomping at the bit. Just ask me the questions because you've been talking about it for like 2 weeks now.
This is how it's going to roll. 192 pages of goodness. It starts off with the introduction. There's about 3 or 4 pages of what this book entails, what's in it, what you get. Then it goes into how to play from pages 12 to 20. It's your turn, attempts and effort, how to do movement and time, loot, death and recovery. Characters. There's a whole section on how to build your characters, the starting basic equipment. Cool part. Alfheim is the fantasy setting and Warp Shell is the sci-fi setting. So you're getting a fantasy and a sci-fi setting all in one kind of a deal here. And there's one section called World Primer. There's World Primer for, I'm sure it's called Alfheim. That's the way I'm reading it. And the other one called Warp Shell.
That is correct.
So there's whole sections, probably 10 plus pages for each section that explain sort of what the world is all about, and which is cool because right out of the gate you get 2 settings. You get fantasy and you get sci-fi, which is awesome. He's got a game mastery section that tells you how to get started, what targets and hearts are, clockwise turns, just different things about how to play the actual system, the encounters, how they work, dangers, energy, stuff like that. Then we get into the monsters section. Starter monsters, creating monsters. There's a loot section that tells you basic, shabby, cursed, warp shell loot, like it's specific loot for that. And then we've got a section on tables, location, obstacles, and goals, hero rollers, monsters rollers, spell list, weapon tags. And then, to top it all off, now we're at page 148. It's filled with adventures. Last Flight of the Red Sword. Check out Victor playing it. It's so cool to watch. And it's really good to watch hanker and play this game and show you from the guy that's writing its perspective how it works. I still don't get it, but it's super cool. Doom Vault, Speed Kills, Eye of the Set, Beneath the Door. There's 5 adventures in this thing. And then we top it off with the glossary. The character sheets are in the very back of the book. There's 2 or 3 different styles. There's the fantasy character sheet. There's the Warp Shell character sheet. And then there's like a little mini index card character sheet and a glossary. So 192 pages of goodness. It's cool to read. So getting started. What is index card RPG? I'm not going to explain it. I'm going to have Victor explain it. And if Hankerin ever does listen to this, I hope we do this justice. Take it away, Victor. How do we play this game?
It's real simple. Anybody has played Dungeons and Dragons, if you've played any kind of role-playing games, or at least most of us, if you haven't played Dungeons and Dragons, everyone is pretty familiar with the D20 system. That is a role-playing game that uses a D20 to do all the attempts and actions that your character wants to do. So the index card role-playing games basically follows that flow of the D20 system. There's different methods of what's called an attempt, so your character wants to attempt to jump the chasm in this example. And then there's effort. And that's something that's a new concept to some people or a lot of people in role-playing games. There's very few systems that use that in this way. And so to give you an example, your character wants to climb a cliff to be able to get to the top, to rescue the princess, whatever that may be. You're going to roll a D20 to make an attempt. If the GM is going to tell you the target number to climb the mountain is going to be a 12. In that attempt, you need to roll a 12 or higher on a 20-sided, and that's it. If you roll 12 or higher, you're successful and you start to climb the cliff. Now, where index card role-playing game differs from other role-playing games is in the usual role-playing game, you roll a D20, you start to climb the mountain or you start to climb the cliff. You roll the die, you roll the 15. That's high enough, successful, and you climb the mountain. In index card role-playing game, it's not quite that simple. There's a system in there called effort. And in this case, the GM would say that you need 10 points of effort to reach the top of the cliff. So when you roll that D20, if you're successful, you get to roll a 6-sided to put a number of points into your effort pool. So when you roll the 6-sided in this example, say I rolled 5, then I would get 5 points of effort. And the GM would explain to you, okay, you struggle and you climb and you slip a couple times on some loose rocks and you're halfway up the cliff. But in order to get to the top, you need to have a total of 10 effort. So, okay, another round comes around and I make another climb check. And this time I don't make it. I rolled a 10 and I don't have enough bonus points or any kind of loot like rope or anything to help me climb. So I slip a little
I lost you there, Victor.
bit.
Yeah, you've faded out. I'll just wait for Victor to come back. So what I find uniquely cool about that situation is Victor's example. You're in combat. Everybody's doing their turns. Taking their turns in a single round. You have turns, which is your GM has a turn. Say you have 4 players. Your 4 players have a turn. When everybody's taking their turn, that's a round. Let's say that you're in combat and you're duking it out with some orcs and they're shooting arrows down at you. This is where this idea of the effort system comes in and becomes such a cool aspect of play, because normally you would just roll a d20, make a dex check, and see if you can climb the 10 feet to get up or whatever it is, right? And then you're good to go. But in ICRPG, simple tasks like that now have a pool or an amount. It's sort of like hit points. Like they have a hit point thing that you need to overcome. The effort is what you need to overcome. Maybe that's a 15, 20 point effort cliff that you need to come or overcome, which is cool because now you're in combat and maybe you make 5 effort the first time, so you're part way up. The next time you make it 10 effort, you're another part way up, right? Like it's just no longer, okay, you've just made your simple dex check and in one round you're up and you're fighting these guys. You're literally like slowly climbing your way up the side of this cliff.
Yeah.
And exactly. That same cool idea applies to chests. You kill a bad guy. Let's say you find a chest. You're in combat. You don't just get to say on your turn, I'm going to open this chest and see what's in it. You literally have to try and make an attempt to see if you can successfully open the chest or successfully apply effort to the chest.
Correct.
But phenomenally
and the chest
cool.
Can be a 5-point chest, so you only need, say it's a wooden crate. It only needs a good old bash with an axe, and if you do enough points of effort or enough points of damage, either or, you're going to open it in one hit. But if it's a oak iron reinforced, chest with a lock on it, that might have 30 points of effort, and it's going to take you a while to hammer through that.
Yeah, there's a section in here called ICRPG in a nutshell. It follows the basic flow of attempts and effort. And that's kind of what we're trying to sort of get across. Like I said, I hope we do this some justice. Everything.
There's a lot in there. I mean, everybody's going to think like, and I don't want everybody to think that, it's kind of like, it's real simple. You roll for, every time you roll something, you're going to roll for effort. There is so much depth to this game. It's not even funny. And everyone's probably like, you're crazy, Victor. How do you get, 100 and something pages and you got a full system that gives you the depth and breadth of other game? There's a whole lot of little rules that are just nuggets of gold. An example would be the target number. When you roll for an attempt, in this case, we're talking about, breaking a chest. When you roll for the attempt, you get a target number that you need to beat. So the GM will tell you, that's a wooden crate. It has a target number of 10. It's easy. You should be able to knock through it with some, with very little effort, quote unquote. But sometimes if you are doing things that are a little more difficult, like say you don't have a large weapon to break that chest open with, you're in, rags, and all you have is a wooden bat or a stick, and you're trying to pry this other, nailed, reinforced, nice cube of a crate open to see what's in it. Maybe it has food, maybe it's going to save your life, and you're using a stick to break it open. Now all of a sudden that target number becomes a hard target number. So whenever you have a hard target or a hard attempt, any roll that you make with it, the target number gets moved up by 3. So in this case, if the chest had a target number of 10, well, because you don't have anything to break it open but your bare hands and this stick that's, not very big, now you have to roll a 13 instead.
Yeah.
But if you had like a crowbar, the opposite is true. Because you're using a tool that makes it easy to pry open boxes, now that attempt, that target becomes 3 less. It becomes an easy target roll. Now, instead of rolling the 10 that you normally needed because you have a crowbar, well, you just need to roll a 7 or more. So this hard and easy target modifiers that you need to do, they can be added on to any attempt. An example that we were using earlier, when you had the character climbing the cliff. If, you start climbing the cliff and then you realize, wow, you pull on the vine, and the GM wants to make it harder for you. And he says, you pull on a vine and you notice the vine is all, you thought it was something you could hold on to, but from the ground, you couldn't tell. When you got closer, you saw it was all dried and withered, and they're just coming out of the ground really easily, making it more difficult for you to climb. Now, all of your climb checks, now that you're halfway up the cliff, all of your climb checks become a hard test. So now instead of rolling the number that was your target number, you add 3 to that, and it becomes even more difficult for you to be able to climb up it.
So these there's now here's where I'm going to chime in here. So basic work is work that you do with your bare hands and raw wits. There's weapon damage. So a basic work is a D4. Anytime you're doing something basic, like climbing the cliff with your bare hands,
sure,
you're going to use
anytime
the D4.
You're sharpening a stick, anytime you're having a drinking game, if you're trying to kick your way through a door, if you're tying these vines to make a rope, all of that is going to require basic effort, and that's where you would roll that die to see how much effort you're doing at every attempt.
So if the target to climb the cliff is a 10, and you make a successful dexterity check to climb, and then you need to beat or do that 10 effort to overcome the entirety of this cliff that you're trying to climb up. If you just have your bare hands, you're rolling a D4 against that effort number. Now let's say you've got some pitons or something like that, and you have a tool or something like that. There is no tool damage in here, but I would say that I would give you weapons damage, which is allowing you to roll a D6 against that effort to reduce its cost. Now, it doesn't really say anything in the rules, but if you've got a tool or something above basic work, I'm just assuming that you could apply weapons damage. Maybe you're going to use your sword or 2 swords or 2 daggers, and you're slamming these daggers into the mountainside as you pull yourself up. You get a roll of D6. We've got another one. Magic.
That's a good observation, Gary. You're actually very, very smart about how you're explaining that, because as a GM, the first thing you're going to do is ask these players, what are you going to use to make it easier for you? What are you going to use to be able to get up that cliff faster without falling off or whatever? A smart guy who has a thief with 2 long daggers, he's like, I'm going to pull out my daggers and use them as, to help me climb. Okay, so now because you're using your weapons to help you, you're going to use, maybe you can do weapon damage for your effort, use the weapon damage die for effort. Or in some cases, a lot of the times your loot is going to give you ideas on what you can do. I do know that there is like rope and grappling hook, and you get to use magical effort whenever you use these in a climbing, whenever you use a rope and grapple in a climbing test.
Yeah,
so instead of rolling a D8, you would get D8 instead.
Here's the cool part. This game is so loot based. We're gonna be all over the place. I can tell, but you know what I mean. So rope and hook gives you a +3 dex when climbing. So if that target number to climb that cliff is a 10, with the rope and the hook, you get a +3 to that roll. So essentially, you just kind of got to beat a 7. There's some other stuff
that makes it easy for you, right?
Yeah, we'll get into the character stuff later, because you get 6 points that you can put in. So you could literally put 6 points into your dexterity if you wanted to be like super dexterous.
Right, exactly. So everybody who's played role playing games, they know when you create a character, you get a certain number of points to be able to get bonuses to your character. In this game, you get 6 points. Each one of those points translates into a bonus of +1 onto any die roll for each stat. So, for example, you have the regular system and regular Dungeons and Dragons, and in this system you get strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool that it's straight across the board, right?
Right, because it's
very similar.
And all Hankerin did was he's like, get rid of all the numbers, all the you have a 10 strength, a 12 dexterity, a 14 constitution, and just go with the straight bonuses.
Yeah,
Don't
1
even
+1
bother with
+2
all the math.
+3.
Exactly. So if you spend 1 point on your strength, well, now your strength becomes +1. So anytime you make an attempt on a D20, and it's a strength attempt, like, fighting with melee weapons, lifting elephants, bending bars, you're gonna get a bonus of +1 to your strength. If you decide to dump all of those or most of those onto one area, you're gonna be really good at one thing and not so good at everything else. That's okay, because that's how all role-playing games are. You can do that in most role-playing games, sometimes up to certain limits. Here you can spread that love, because you not only get 6 points to distribute amongst those 6 stats. This is where it gets kind of tricky. You have points you can spend on your armor, and you have points you can spend on your basic, weapon, magic, and ultimate effort dice. So now, instead of just 6 stats, you have 5 other stats. You have a total of 11 stats that you get to distribute 6 points with. So clearly, you're not going to be able to give everything a bonus, but you could give, say you're playing a fighter, you want to give him 2 points in strength, 2 points in constitution, and 2 points in weapons damage. So as a fighter, in general, all the fighty stuff that you're going to be doing, all the combat stuff, all the strength checks, and all the hitting with weapons, you're going to do fairly better than everyone else, because you're going to get a +2 bonus to all of those. But if you decide to solve a riddle, or if you decide to, talk the fair maiden into giving you the clue to where the king is, you're probably not going to do that well, because you're going to be rolling straight die rolls.
Mm-hmm. And so I was under the impression, now that we've sort of just been talking about it here for a second, the effort, I thought you could increase your effort as well, but you can, but you can't. There are loots available that will give you bonuses to your effort in certain situations. For example,
Correct.
You might find a key that will help you magically open chests, and so anytime you're opening a chest, that key will give you +3 to doing that chest thing. In the character creation section, we're skipping way ahead here. You've got your 6 attributes: your strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. Those you can add up 1 to 6 points, because you only get 6, so you have to choose to each of those, and those are going to help you when you're trying to beat the target score, the ability.
Yeah, anytime you try to make an attempt. But
an attempt, that's
correct. You can use those 6 points to distribute them. You can distribute those 6 points to your armor and any one of the effort die. So, for example, you can spend 1 point on armor, and now your armor class is 11. Anytime your armor class starts at the base 10.
Yeah,
you can add 1 point to basic work. So every time you roll that D4 for basic effort, you're going to add 1 to that die roll. Every time you can add 1 to your weapons damage, or 2 or 3. So every time you roll for anything from a sword, a spear, a bow, or axes, and this is something we haven't talked about, all weapons do a D6 damage.
Yes. And because we're jumping around just having a conversation, there's also magic effect. Back to climbing the cliff. If you just use your bare hands, you're going to roll a 4 versus the effort of and trying, so you can see a D4. If it maxed out, you're gonna do a maximum of 4 to try and climb that cliff. You can tell it's going to take 3 rounds of good rolls to bare hands your way up the cliff. With your daggers, you might get a bit more purchase, and you're going to get a D6. It's going to take 2 rounds of good rolls to get up. Now, let's say you're a spellcaster, Victor, and you get the D8. You're using a fly spell or a levitate spell or something along those lines. And then you can use your magic effect to maybe help float you up the side of this cliff, and you're rolling a D8.
Exactly. That's exactly how it works. And you can use those 6 points to distribute amongst your stats to give you bonuses to those die rolls. So there's a very good chance if you're if you have a fighter or a magician that has bonuses in those efforts, there's a good chance you might be able to get up there in maybe one turn. It just depends how well you roll. Sometimes you're a really good climber and you grew up in the mountains and you're part goat or something, and your character says your special ability is when you make a climb check, you roll ultimate effort. Well, now you're getting to roll a D12 for every attempt that is successful. So there's a good chance if that's your character, you might make it up there no problem.
Yeah,
in one round.
Talk about a simplistic way of doing basically everything. You have your attempts that are affected by your attributes, and then you have the effort that you need to beat, which is put in by one of these, the 4, the 6, the 8. Cool side note, if you roll a natural 20 on your attempt, you also get to add in what's called the ultimate dice, and that's a D12 that you get to add. So you'd roll your D4 if you were just bare-handsing it, and you'd roll your D12. So
as your effort, right? You
as
add
your
those
effort
together, and if you roll the max on that, now you're at 14, 16 as your effort for that one attempt. You could easily all of a sudden God's gift to climbing, and you're up that cliff and you're at the top waiting for everybody to get up there for you.
Yeah, so kind of basically everything is just attempts and efforts. Now we're talking about this target number. It says players take turns to describe their actions. That was another sort of cool thing on a side note here, a little tangent. As I was watching him play, he basically just went clockwise. Everybody rolled the dice. The guy with the highest D20, he started it off, and then it just went, and everything just went clockwise, and away we go. He keeps his games in sort of the entire game is in rounds, like you're always in combat. If you were to play D&D, it would be the same thing as always being in combat. So as he's explaining things and telling you what's going on, like he talks about the warp shell and how it connects to the ship through this umbilicus and all of this other stuff. So he's giving you the flavor of what's going on. And then he's like, okay, player A, what are you going to do? And that player then gets to describe what they're going to do. Maybe they're going to make an attempt at something, you know what I mean? But so it's very cool. And then once that player has done a couple of things, they've either decided they're going to try and make an attempt at something, maybe done some effort, or a little bit of something, whatever their goal is. It just goes to the next person, and then what is that person going to do? Okay, I pull out my sword and I fire up my armor.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that makes the game really flow is his perception of how game management is handled or turn management is handled as a GM. He has them, this guy goes first. He's the first chair on my left-hand side at the table, and it goes clockwise. So if you sit in that chair, you know that you're going to be the first one to go every single time you sit down at the game. Now, if you know that the wizard is probably not the first person you want to go in every single turn for the rest of the game that night, but many times he's told us too, and I haven't experienced this because I've just played with it online, but he's told us sometimes we'll go into combat, then the players realize on the first turn of the first combat of the night that person always gets to go first. So the next time the combat comes around, the players will get up and switch places, and they'll be like, okay, we want the cleric to go first, or the fighter to go first, and then the assassin, and then the thief, and then the wizard, and then the cleric. That way, if anything goes wrong, the cleric can heal any one of us that goes down. And then the players start thinking strategically who needs to be sitting where to be able to move, to be able to start the turn, or to be able to go through this process. And they'll give up their turns to be able to get the one person to start the round with that with that initiative, so to speak. But,
Yeah.
Backstepping that a little bit, you were talking about time and rounds. One of the things that it talks about in the book is there's 3 different types of time that each game turn goes through. One is like combat. It's all one action, one movement per person, and you got about 5 or 10 seconds to do everything that you need to do: kick down a door, light a wagon on fire, whatever it may be. And that's called moments. That whenever you go into combat, everything is in moments, short seconds. The whole entire game doesn't happen in those moments. There are times when you can have combat rounds or non-combat rounds, when you're between battles, when you're resting all your wounds, or you're you have to travel on the road, or maybe build some fortifications or whatever. That is called hours when you do that. It's a different method of tracking continual time. So when you're in hours, each player turn can take up to 1, 2, or up to 3 hours. So in this case, say I got wounded really badly, I'm left down to 1 hit point, but I'm alive, and and he'll tell you, you guys have a few hours before the next encounter happens, or the next next major item goes along. You have, what do you want to do? Player number 1, Victor, what do you want to do for those couple of hours? And I think to myself, okay, I'm gonna build a campfire and try to recover my wounds and bandage up my stuff or whatever. And he'll say, okay, for the next few hours, you'll get this many hit points or whatever. What are you going to do? Oh, well, I'm going to finish working on this spell that I've been working on for months now, trying to finish it. And what are you going to do? The cleric is going to put some ashes or some smell goods into the fire, and is going to ask for forgiveness and help for all the things that he's done for the day, because that's what he's required to do. And he'll do that for a few hours, and everyone just role plays what they're going to do for those few hours. That's just one of the continual time methods that he uses to track. The other one that's fairly common is days. So everything is in moments or hours or days. And sometimes if you're traveling, like say on a ship, and it takes you 5 days to get across the lake or the river or the ocean to get to the location where you need to do, he's talking about stretching out time and what you're going to do during that time. And maybe the fighter or the thief are going to practice their sword fighting just to kind of stay up on edge, or maybe they're going to do something to be able to, come up with a ritual with the cleric and the magic user to help each other. Maybe one of them is going to try to get a message to someone, and lots of different things can go on in a couple of days. Sometimes it's just a matter of rest, but whatever it may be, all those different things that you can do during a round, each player will have that amount of time, whether it's a couple of days, a couple of hours, or sometimes just a couple of seconds to be able to do the things to do. And it really narrows down the focus on what you can and cannot do as a character.
Yeah, and it's if you've ever, if you're listening to this, you've at some point probably played Dungeons and Dragons. And the premise behind it is like you're always in combat. The only difference is that the time changes. Like in combat, you always have the person that goes first. Like the days, the minutes, the days and the hours and stuff like that. It's always, at least that's the impression I got, that it's always like you're in combat. Even though you're not in combat, it's like, okay, like you were saying, we're in the hour section. You're resting. And you look to the person who's up next, let's say it's their turn, what are you going to do for this hour? I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then you go to the next person, like you would be in combat, how are you going to attack this person? Are you going to cast a spell, whatever? That's in the minutes. It's very, very cool, because I find that in a lot of role-playing games, as a dungeon master or a game master, when you're talking or telling a story, usually you have people that will just like spring up and they'll come up with these great ideas like, oh, I'm going to do this. And then somebody else is like, haha, wouldn't it be
in 6 seconds? Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
I wouldn't it be funny if you did this, or wouldn't it be funny if you did that? Yeah. And you get this sort of immediate burst of chaos that just enters your game, and as a dungeon master can be frustrating. And the cool part about watching this is once everybody gets into the flow of the game, you really get the impression that it maybe only talk when it's your turn, or just little spurts of, hey, maybe do this, or hey, maybe do that, or you
it's
could
a
even
testament to Hankerin's experience in playing games. I mean, he's been playing games for as long as we have, right? 20 plus years. Won't give away our age there. It gives the player a framework which to conduct their actions that they're declaring for their turn. I mean, there's lots of common things that happen in an RPG when you play, right? Some of the major ones are combat, rest and recovery, downtime, and then like story. the parts where, you start talking about all the fluff and stuff that happens. And if you tell a player you've got hours to work, to do rest and recovery, well, then the player knows, okay, I can't build a ship in hours. I can't build a castle in hours. I can heal myself. I can get something to eat. I can help my friend. I can maybe write a song, or I can sharpen my swords and, clean up the dents in my shield. I can do that in a couple of hours. So they know automatically it creates the framework for them to be able to give the actions when it is their turn, to be able to say, I know I can do this. I know I can't do that. I can do this. Okay, I'm going to cast a spell that takes an hour, and it's going to be a wish spell. And I'm going to use the ritual of the fire and do this and a diamond and all this other stuff. And they know automatically. It helps them, the player, be able to explain to the GM within the confines of that framework. I know I'm in hours. I know there's only certain things I can do in that. I won't be able to fly back to the castle and come back in a number of hours. We're too far away. We've been gone for weeks or whatever. It's across the ocean. It's different if you say, okay, now we're in days time, and you have a number of days, and everyone can do, actions that could take a few days. Oh, then that means I have time to fly back to the castle, get the sword, and come back. Yes. Yeah. That's what I do. And so automatically now the players don't get what I call gridlock, or, where you have so many options, you don't know what to do as a player. It helps the player make decisions on what they are capable of doing and what they're not capable of doing, and then declaring those actions appropriately within that framework. And just to be able to do that, if you've been GMing for as long as I have, that is a bit of genius, to be able to create a mechanic that supports the players to be able to make those decisions in actions and movement while they're doing the game. That is genius right there.
Yeah, there's a cool little rhyme that Eric just said on one of the last podcasts that we did. Basically, when you have too many choices, you lock up, and I can't remember what the little rhyme is for it, but I just remembered something that I wanted to say. In this idea of always being in combat, I don't want to confuse people by making it sound like you're always in combat, because you're not. But the idea that you play ICRPG as though it's a continual combat. This person gets their turn, that person gets their turn.
You're always on, right? Actors call that being always on, where you're always in character. You always have an opportunity to do something, even though you're not speaking. That's what always on means. And in ICRPG, that's the same concept. Regardless of whatever the continual time you're using, whether it's moments, hours, or days, and whether you're in combat, rest and recovery, downtime, or story, you're always have a chance to do something. If you're in a story segment and you have days to go through it, maybe you decide to pick up a love affair with one of the local trollops and she gets kidnapped. And now all of a sudden that becomes a choice. Do I go rescue her, or do I continue on with my adventuring friends, or do I get them to convince him to help me rescue her before we continue on our adventure? And all that can be wrapped up all in your turn as a player. And it gives you that option and that framework to be able to make those decisions. And that for me was absolute genius. But what's even cooler is you can do that. You can use that continual time concept in any role-playing game. You don't just have to use it in index card. I mean, yeah, it works great for D&D. Imagine doing that in Savage Worlds. Imagine doing that in Savage Rifts. Now your game can literally just click on and off and continue on and off from moments to hours to days without having to worry about it. And your players won't know the difference.
Yeah, we still haven't touched on the premise that I wanted to impart upon the peoples. And like I said, because it's you play this game like every round is a combat. This is what I was trying to get across. I'm going to spit it right out. Everybody gets a say. Everybody gets a turn. Everybody gets to say what they want to do. Right. It's not like you have this one person that in role-playing games. Yeah, because there's just not that. It's like that person, that spotlight gets spread around everybody because you're always playing the game like you're in combat. Player A, what are you going to do? I'm going to go to town. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Okay, let's make a charisma roll to see if maybe you can talk this guy into sweet talk him into giving you a sword, and you do your deal, and then the next player gets to do his, and this guy's going to go over and talk to this person. But everybody gets to share the spotlight because you play in this idea that you're always in this sort of turn-based combat, and all the only thing that changes is the time that you're allotted to do things. Okay, right. Let's put a pin in that, Victor, because there's so much more.
Like I said before, you can do that in any role-playing game. You can take that one concept. Page 17 of this index card role-playing game, you can take that one concept and take it to any role-playing game that you play and it will change the way you game at the table.
No, that and super cool because you always play with the power guys. There's always the power guys. There's always the timid guys and stuff like that, right? And this just spreads that spotlight out.
Yeah.
Okay, so how to play? We got welcome to the table. The stage is set. It's your turn. Describe. So the sort of the things that you would do. Describe what you're going to do. This is what you do as a player. I'm going to do this. Okay, as the GM, I'm going to set the target number. Here's one other thing too that we should get in or just sort of throw out there because it seems to be the sort of the key factor to everything, the target number. If you're playing on a map like you guys were playing on this starship, the Red Sword, there's the bridge map. And on that bridge map, he is going to set the target. So let's start with the docking bay, for example. You guys connect with the umbilical cord, and he throws down this token that says a 10 on it. He's using his 20-sided die or whatever he's using. The game comes with tokens for tabletop, but he sets that entire map difficulty at 10. So to open the door, to attack a monster, to Jimmy the lock.
Everything that happens in that encounter, everything that happens in that room or at that moment that's the target number on the table. That's the target number on the TV, on the screen, or that's the card that the DM has pulled out to lay out on the table to show you that's what it is. That's the target number for everything. You want to climb that wall, it's a target number of 12. You want to knock the door down, it's a target number of 12. You want to race across a slippery floor, it's a target number of 12. It's slippery, so that's going to be a hard roll. It's 15. And you want to try to throw a sword across the room in complete darkness. That's a target number of 12. Always it's going to be whatever he puts out there. I want to give a little explanation to that, and I promise it'll be short. Hankering is
I don't believe you. Nothing you ever do is short, buddy.
I'm trying to edit in my brain as I'm talking about this, but Hankering is very smart about how he builds encounters. If you take a look at some of his YouTube channels, he talks about some of the writings he has in his journals, the way in his methods he takes notes, the way he's creating his encounter pages, because he creates them on 1 or 2 pages in his notebook. I mean, this is not like 50 pages of encounter lists. They're very short, very concise, to the point, efficient, and easy to read. And I think he does it just because it's his own note-taking habits. But he puts one target number on there because it's just simple, right? Mm-hmm. It's the keep it simple rule. It makes it easy for everybody to know immediately on the table what the target number of the room is going to be.
Everything.
And he makes sure that number goes with all the traps, all the effects. He kind of thinks a little bit. He thinks through the problem and he says, okay, this is a really tough room. I'm going to make it a 17. Oh, that's a little too high. These are low-level characters. Okay, we'll make it a 15, and that's a challenge. And he goes with it. And he's told us a bunch of times, those of us who are on the page looking up and making all these encounters, just go with your gut. Go what you think will go with. And as you play the game more, you'll notice, it's a little high, it's a little low. But who cares? What's the difference of 1 or 2 points? It just makes the game that much more fun anyways.
Yeah,
and in a way, he's right. Everything
he does, and everything that I've read so far, his entire... I don't want to speak for him, but it just seems like everything he does is basically boiled down to the lowest common denominator. Let's make it as simple as possible so there's no farting around.
Keep it simple. And you know what? I think a lot of people may think that he's doing that just out of luck or experience or whatever. It's deliberate. He's doing it on purpose. And he's not doing it on purpose to be smart. He's just doing it on purpose to make it easier for him when he plays his games.
Yeah.
When he GMs, it's almost as much fun to watch him GM as it is him to do the actual act of running the game.
Yeah,
he looks like he's having as much fun as the players are. And for me, that is absolute gold. I love that about him. I love for him to be able to see that and do that. He makes this stuff up and is throwing it out there like it's literally like you're throwing something at a dartboard, and it just sticks every single time. He comes up with these gold nuggets, just throws them out there. And I'm glad he wrote it down, because it would be a travesty to see all these ideas get thrown out the window.
You can see it in his writing because everything is precise and to the point. In some areas, I'm going to have to say it might be a little too precise. There could be a little expansion on it. I'll have to think of them and I'll bring them up. But everything just seems to be boiled down to its nuts and bolts. So the docking bay map.
He's always talked about that, though. He's always talked about how everything is just real short and sweet. He's always talked about you need to let the rules get out of the way and just get to the story. Because what's the whole point of playing a role-playing game if there's not going to be a story behind it? Otherwise, it just becomes a war game. It just becomes a game of chess. It's not all about that. All those extra little bits that you don't understand or you need some more extrapolation on, make that up as you go. That's his whole mantra with it. If you don't like it, make it fit in your game, however you want your game to do. In your game, if dragons don't breathe fire and they breathe hot air, then have them breathe hot air. He's not going to care, but they're still going to do the same amount of damage. They're still going to use the same method. This is just a baseline to base your entire game off of. And he's always preached that. And that's a little bit of genius right there.
Yeah, so the docking bay map will have a target number of 10. Now, let's say that you want to go up and you want to try and pick the or decode the lock to get in.
You're talking about Last Flight of the Red Sword, right?
Yes, sir. And so, and sort of just trying to give people an idea as to how the game would work.
Yeah.
But the one guy he's the tank. He's the big dumb tank. He's got all his points and strength, and he's out there to kick arse and take names. He's like, oh, I'm going to try and pick the lock. And as a DM, as me being the GM, I would be like, okay, this is going to be hard for you because you don't have any kind of skill in this, but maybe you've got the ship's navigator, and maybe he's more of the thief class, so to speak, the sneak, the spy.
Like he's got the ship's navigator in a headlock right there next to him, telling him what buttons to press. But that's true. So, that's what he's going to do. He's going to go and give him a target number, and he's going to make it easier for him because he's the navigator.
It's
so now
the
the
10
number, instead of being a 12, becomes -3 is in what, 9, 10, 11?
Yeah.
12? Yeah.
I think we're confusing people because you keep saying 12 and I keep saying 10, but the premise,
I couldn't remember.
That's okay. The premise is that the docking bay map would have a target number of 10. Anything is a 10 difficulty. If you're the big dumb tank trying to pick the lock, I'm going to say that's hard for you to do. And I'm going to add +3 to make it a hard roll. So instead of being a 10, it becomes a 13. If you're the sneaky thief guy that's the infiltrator of the group, I'm going to say this is going to be easy for you, so you can make an easy roll, and he would have to beat a 7. So the flexibility, the instant flexibility and the simplicity of it it's just like that. Now we get inside the ship and we're in the sort of the mid corridor, and that target number can
hit the fan is what happens.
And it can change. He throws out a 12 as the target number, and everything on that map is a 12 plus or -3, depending on whether or not as a GM you think it's easy or hard for that person to do. Super cool. On your turn, he's got describe, roll, and results, and that's it. Then we go on to the next person. The next person describes what they're going to do. They make a roll, and the GM describes the results. On to the next person. Keeps the flow of the game going. Now, we're 3 kinds of turns. So you've got the moves, too. The moves are super simple, right? Move far, move near and make an action, or stay put and make an action. Everything is based on this concept of far, near, or close. So there's only 3 sets of distances. I can say to you, that guy's far away. Well, you're not going to be able to swing a sword if he's far away, and that's all the description that I need to give. I don't need to say that guy's 6.
And that's what's smart about it. It doesn't matter. If somebody's going to say, well, how far is far? Too far to use a sword. That's all that matters. You don't have to say 360 feet. Who cares? If all you have is a sword, what difference does it make if he's 300 feet or 10 feet away? He's too far for you to use a sword. That's the whole point. He uses that close, near, and far to be able to differentiate everything from the range of a bow, throwing a rock, casting a spell, being able to see other combatants, or even just moving your character. When you move, you can move anywhere that you want from within the near range and still have an action. If you move far, you don't get to get the extra action unless something gives you that bonus or penalty.
Yep.
That taking away the range, now you no longer have to make the notations for weapons and other loot with range numbers on them. You can just put range near, 2d8 or weapon effort close range only, or whatever that may be.
Yeah, and if you're playing I'm going to play Gartar Sunday on Tabletop Simulator. Hopefully I can find the model of a banana before then, but if I do, I'm going to throw that banana on the table, and I'm going to give that banana probably maybe a 6-inch, 7-inch kind of a square size, and that's going to be it. Here's your banana. This is how you mark what's near, what's far away, etc., etc. Super simple premise. There's a thing right here that I'm looking at on page 12. How do you succeed? You roll your 20 plus your stat versus the target number. So simple. Everything applies to that. There's three kinds of actions.
And that's basic role playing. I mean, that's basic role playing games, right? Everybody rolls a die, you add a stat or a bonus, and you might get something extra, and that's it. Even in Savage Worlds, Shadowrun, and all the other different games, you roll a couple of dice, you get a bonus to it, and there's your target number for the most part, or that's a number of successes that you need to get. And this system is that simple, but there's so many other little things that make it so much greater than that.
And
you really have to play it and get into it to really get a feel for it. It's tough to describe in an hour.
Yep. Beat the target is another section that they've got in here, which basically just tells you, you want to pick that lock. This map is a difficulty 12. You found a loot case or loot chest. You got to beat a 12. If you're just using your hands, you just get the D4 to beat, say that's a 1 heart chest. Everything's also done in hearts. A heart is 10 points or 10 hit points. Very simple.
It's shorthand. It's shorthand for hit points. Half a heart's 5 points. A full heart is 10 points. So if you're looking for a real tough monster, you flip through the book and you find a monster that has 3 or 4 hearts. That's going to be a really tough fight for any low-level character. Oh, yeah. And by the way, there are no levels in this game.
Yeah, no, I haven't found anything about that either. So once you beat the target, you roll your effort. And that's the whole premise of the game. Beat the target number. If you do, roll an effort. Common checks, page 14. So strength checks, dexterity checks, con, int, wisdom, and charisma. He's kind of broken it down into what you would do with each one of these. And they just really speak of the simplicity of the system. If you're going to make a dex check, what would you make a dex check for? Hide and shadow, sneak, dodge something, shoot a bow or something like that, or jump over an obstacle. Anything that required dexterity is a dex check. Strength is the same thing. Hold on for dear life, stop a rolling wagon, stand firm, hold open a gate.
Bash a chest, break open a door. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Exactly. Right? It's just like intelligence checks are the same way. You need to remember a password. You try to speak a second language. You know, you're trying to remember a legend, that spell you forgot, the name of that guy you met 3 weeks ago. That kind of stuff is intelligence checks. It's just, they're basic, simple tasks that you do in every single game. They may have different ability names or whatever, but that's all you really need to. And it's really simple. It's literally boiled down to one page describes all of that.
Yeah, as a DM, you just have to think, okay, based on what you're telling me, what skill does that apply to? Oh, I want to try and bend the bars to get out of this prison. Okay, well, that's obviously going to be strength, right? I want to jump up and grab onto this chain and pull myself up to the next level through this hole in the ceiling that this chain is dangling through. Okay, well, maybe that's a dexterity or a strength. You can let your players decide based on what their best skill is, which one you want, because there's
how they're going to use that to be able to make the attempt. So a lot of players who play D&D will know that there's a list of 20-something skills that every single character has that you can apply points to be able to be better at, whether it's riding horses, swimming, jumping, acrobatics, or whatever. In ICRPG, they get rid of those, and it's just statistic check. It's just a regular basic common check. So, for example, if you want to ride horses, riding is a wisdom skill in D&D. In this game, okay, I want to ride my horse and make it jump. Okay, make a wisdom check. There's no, how many points do you have in wisdom? Do you get your wisdom bonus? Do you have a proficiency bonus? Add all that together, make the die roll, here's your penalties, and that's what it is. I'm going to jump the horse over the chasm. In ICRPG, you make a wisdom check, and that's a hard check. Done.
Yeah. It's very, very cool. Another cool feature about this game is scoring loot. And the reason I think that the loot part is cool is because this game really does... I don't want to do it a disservice by saying that it's like it rips off D&D, but it takes a lot of elements from. I sometimes just have to watch what I say. It takes a lot of Dungeons and Dragons elements, and a lot of the Dungeons and Dragons, or one of the primary D&D elements, is the quest for loot. Anytime you kill a group in D&D, you're always searching for loot. Well, in this game, if you kill a monster that has 1 heart, you can make a random roll off of this loot table, and there's various loot tables in here. You can also get milestone rewards, which is your fighter has milestones. There's maybe 5 ideas for what a milestone reward. That's kind of leveling up. You can loot fallen foes. You can you might just find something. Finders keepers. The world is a big place, and many valuables.
Yeah, sometimes loot gets dropped by your enemies. You get like an instant chest.
Gotcha.
And you have to roll a certain amount of effort, or maybe there's no effort. It's just a chest and it has stuff in it. Maybe enemy was a bunch of orcs with laser guns and they decide to run instead of fight you. So
Dragon's Chesser pile.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can roll up. The GM can take a caveat. The guidance is for every heart, there should be a chest or some type of loot left behind that can be discovered, used, or otherwise. But yeah, for the most part.
And the last one,
there's some loot there somewhere.
Yeah, the last one is a kingly gift, and it's kind of generic, but basically it could be any gift. It could be a beggar's gift, a hobo's gift. It could be whatever. It could be, I need you to go do this thing for me, and all I have to pay you is this ring. That is a kingly gift. Exactly. The chests are super cool too. Just the idea, like when I was listening to you guys play Red Sword, I just loved the fact that you're like, oh, I'm gonna, one of them was rolling around on the floor when the star spazzed out, kind of a thing. I can't think of the word.
When the radiation was coming and going through and it was damaging everybody. Yeah.
And so you fell to the ground, but then while you were down there, you found this loot box, and so that's really cool because you found a 1 heart chest box, and even though it's your turn, the game doesn't stop. It doesn't sort of come out of this every round combat feeling. You've got this chest. Of course, as a player, you're going to want to know what's in it, but the game...
And of course, as a GM, you're going to put an anti-radiation suit in that chest. Maybe only one, but there is an anti-radiation suit in that chest. Yes, that is the genius of ICRPG.
You might find a lollipop too, mister. But so the hearts on chests are super cool because sure, as a player, you can say like, all right, screw everybody else. I really want to see what's in this chest. And you're sitting there and you're like, and it could take you 2 or 3 rounds because you're rolling a 1 on your effort every time. And you're just fiddling around with this chest, which is really neat. It's not like, oh yeah, you just open it up and away you go. You pick the lock and you're done. No,
sometimes you get lucky though. You roll a 20 on that roll, and with your D4 basic effort, you get to add D12 ultimate effort to it. So you're that guy that walks up to the chest and goes, and kicks it, and the lid pops open. Yeah. It happens.
You cast a spell.
It's just the way it rolls.
Smash it with a sword. There was in one of them the barbarian guy was beating it with his weapon, and he's doing weapon damage to try and open it, which is really cool, right?
I've seen that happen too, where you get a set of lockpicks for the thief-like character, and the lockpicks allow you to roll ultimate dice whenever you attempt to pick a lock on a chest.
Yeah, very simple, very cool. I just like the idea that it's not one and done. There's more to it. There's more sustenance to it, but it's still simple. The loot types, you've got food, gear, spells, and powers. Very simple. They don't even really need to be explained. The death and dying. When you're reduced to 0 hit points...
Now, this one's kind of cool.
Yeah, when you're reduced to 0 hit points, you're dying.
When you're reduced to 0 hit points, you're dying. You might be unconscious or bleeding out, whatever it is, but you're on death's door. So on the next turn after you were dropped below 0 hit points or less, you roll a 6-sided, and that is how many turns you get before you are considered dead. And hope and pray you don't roll a 1. And for every turn that you get from that die, you're going to be on what's called your dying countdown. During that time, you're going to roll a d20 every time your turn goes up. So, for example, we roll a d6, when we're dying, because I took a hit from a sword or a spear in the chest, and I'm -3 hit points. So now I'm dying. So I roll the 6-sided. I got a 3. That means I have 3 turns before I'm dead. On my next turn, which is the first dying turn, I'm going to roll a 20-sided. If I get a natural 20, I get my breath back and I wake up and from unconsciousness and realize it was just a flesh wound. The shock of it just got me, but I only have 1 hit point left.
And if you get any other number
or anything else, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say the same thing you're saying. If you get any other number other than a 20, you get shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And you continue to die. And you do that every turn. On the last turn, you have one last time to roll a 20. If you don't roll a 20, you are considered dead.
You're done. Yeah,
that's it. No arguments, no nothing. Now it's up to the GM to decide what's going to happen at that moment, whether you wake up in a hospital or however that works out. But a lot of the times you can stop someone from dying. An ally just has to reach you and give you some help, whether it's holding up your head so you don't choke to death, or using healing magic, or whatever the case may be. Even just, holding them and saying, "Don't die on me, man," that kind of stuff. It'll halt the countdown, and you'll remain unconscious until you're healed, or until you can get, they'll throw you over their shoulder and drag you across the mountain if that's what they need to do.
Yeah.
Now there is one caveat, traumatic damage. If you take so much damage that you're reduced to negative 20 hit points or worse in a single hit, so like a big stone ball rolls.
I love it.
Or you're blown to pieces. There's no corpse. You're done. They're 0. You're out of there. No coming back.
Yeah.
It's just one of those. There's no way you could survive it.
Yeah, that's what he says. If you take so much damage that you're reduced to minus 20 hit points or worse in a single hit, you're blown to pieces. You've just become blood and dust.
Yeah, so there's no death roll on that one. Your parts don't come back together and you miraculously survive with only 1 hit point left. Nope, sorry. There's just so much points it can take.
I really like that you don't have to go over and really do any kind of a medical thing. Like, as a player, all you have to go over, and it says right here, you just grab him by the head. You're like, "Don't die on me, man!" And that's all it takes to sort of stabilize that player.
Yeah, that's all it takes, because the game is built to be deadly. There's going to be many times where you're going to be down left to 1 hit point. I know that because I've been there. I was like that in Last Flight of the Red Sword, down to 1 hit point. And when you're there and your buddies are within a 1 round of either moving towards you to help you, or opening the door or locking the door that keeps the demon from coming and taking over the world, sometimes those decisions are really hard to make. You have to do what you have to do, right? The player has to make those decisions.
Very simple again, very simple. Boiled down to its basic essence. You don't have to do anything. Anybody can do it, but it's enough of a mechanic to actually change the way the game plays. Maybe the tank is the only guy close enough that he's got 1 round, and the tank's the only one that's near enough to get to this fallen comrade, and he has to stop attacking the beast that he's fighting in order to save his buddy.
Save your friend.
Just to take that 1 round to go over and say, "Don't die on me, man."
Yep. And
recovery.
That's what it's about.
Recovery is kind of, I don't want to make it sound like I'm knocking this, but it's kind of shitty, but good, but shitty, because you can. The cool feature is that in mere moments, which is the equivalent to exactly what D&D combat is, you can spend a turn doing recovery. Yeah, 1 round. You can make a constitution roll. You get 1 hit point back, and that's it, which is why I think it's kind of shitty. But at the same time, it adds that element of you're in some serious battles here. This is no time.
You've seen it 100 times. Look at Indiana Jones. He boxes, he fights, he takes 12 guys on him. For the last 10 minutes, you've been watching him, take about 30 hits that he would take Rocky down. But then at the very end, he stoops over, he kneels down on 1 knee, without any breath of air in his lungs, and he's hating it. He's all cut up and bloody, and he reaches over and he grabs his hat that he dropped in the last turn. He dusts it off. He stands up. He puts it on, and now he's all brand new, no bruises, all ironed up, no torn clothes, and he's all ready to go. Yeah, that may be only 1 hit point, but you still get that moment. You still get that moment of safety.
And it's very cool, and that he's put this in here, because in old school D&D, there's some stats, just depending on what class you decide to play, aren't worth shit. It's one of the fascinating things that I love about Savage Worlds is every stat is worth something, has an effect, will help you in some way. There's no throwaways. But in this one, he added this in to help Constitution not just be that throwaway stat. Right, you can make your recovery. You can say I'm. I lean up against the I hide behind cover. I catch my breath, and you make your Constitution roll to recover 1 hit point. But let's say you put a couple of points in Constitution.
Right.
You can add those couple of points onto this 1 hit point.
Con bonus to that amount. So you not only get 1 hit point, you get 1 plus however much bonuses you have that you put into your con stat.
Yeah,
so
simple.
It's going to matter every single time you take that 1 moment. If you put 2 points into your con stat, you lean against the wall, wrap your leg up where you got cut before, and wipe the blood from your eyes. And next thing you know, you have 3 hit points instead of 1 because you decided to put 2 points as your Constitution bonus. And it totally changes the game in that 1 moment because you put 2 points in your Constitution.
Yeah, super simple. But there's just that tinge of mechanic to it that just makes it worth something.
Simple. I call the system, and I say it a lot, simple but brilliant.
Yep. In hours as opposed to in mere moments. If you rest Do you for one turn, so you can recover 1 heart, which is 10 hit points.
10 hit points. Plus your con bonus.
Yeah, but you don't have to make any rolls. So between battles, but
Correct.
only in complete safety, you can in
And
an
that makes
hour.
sense.
Yeah, there's no roll. Only the story will tell if between battles but not safe, a sacrifice turn earns 1 hit point. Okay, so essentially in an hour you'll get 1 heart per hour. Now, if we're in the days time section, you get all of your hit points back in a day if nothing happens. Very simple. Boom, boom, boom.
As long as nothing happens, right? As long as you're in somewhat safety and you're resting, and you're not like trying to go through storm-ridden mountains, fighting off orcs and trolls along the way. Sure, that makes total sense, because if you're going to be on the road for 15 days traveling by wagon, caravan, and horseback, there's not really much you can do but gain your strength back.
Yeah. So we've hit the hour marker, but I feel like now that we've gotten into ICRPG a little bit, our flow,
the tip.
Yeah, not only that, but our flow seems to be a little better. We're not sort of drooling on a bunch of things, and we're right at character creation. So let's just rip through character creation, and then we'll put a pin in this episode and maybe do another one, and then maybe we'll throw out another ICRPG that will cover some of the extra materials, and then maybe you could sweet talk Hankering into coming on the show and correcting everything we effed up.
That would be awesome. I think I've told you before. I've spoken to Hankering a little bit just shortly about doing it, and we're talking about doing Dark Sun using the ICRPG role-playing game.
Yeah.
We definitely want to try that soon, so I'm sure we can convince him once we play a couple of games with him.
And on Sunday, I'm going to do my Gartar. I've already run Gartar in Savage Worlds. It's just stupid rip-off of it's everything in the kitchen sink thrown into one worlds without
I've noticed.
That's
awesome.
It just doesn't have the Savage Worlds, here's 50 dice to throw at it. It's straight core. Anyways, I'm going to try playing that because, you see, I know that story. Sure. I've played that story. I created that story. It's already made, and I just want to try it out so that I can play these rules for the first time and get the flow of it, because I'm going to this con and I'm going to take my cards at the con and we're just going to go. So anyways, build a character.
Yeah, that'll be
You
awesome.
are a hero. Character sheets are very simple. What have you got? You've got 6 basic stats, an armor, and you've got
4 effort.
Yeah, basic weapons, magic, and ultimate. 4 effort slots. So there's 11 total slots that you can have as a character. You start with 10 armor. Number 1, it says choose an image. I think this is the best way to start any fucking character that you ever do, is choose an image, because an image is 1,000 words. Like, you just, in your head what you want.
In a heartbeat.
Step 2,
that
dream a story.
Number 2. Yeah, you dream a story, right? Exactly. As soon as you see the picture, you're gonna be like, "Oh, look at his shoulder; it has a bunch of scars on it." That's why he keeps it all armored up all the time and covered. And next thing you know, it's popping in your head, and you automatically know what your character wants to be, what kind of race he is, what kind of class he is, the kind of morals that he has, the kind of equipment that he carries, all in one picture, all in one story.
Yep. Step 3: build stats and effort. There's no trick to it. That's it. 6 points. Nope. You have 11 slots that you can put 6 points in. Any configuration, Victor? There's no.
Nope. No configuration. No minimums. No maximums. We've talked about it in the playtesting and extensively online on the Google Plus page, and we've talked about maybe putting a maximum of 4 points in one stat. But Hankering has the idea, if you want to make a super strong character in all strength, good luck, because he's going to suck everything else that's not strength.
6 points in strength.
And that makes a big difference if you're playing, an intrigue game in the city where you don't get to use your strength a lot, because no one likes to see the big brute walk around and beat up people. Except the one time you do beat someone up, you're going to beat their head in.
Yeah.
Just distribute the points and choose wisely. That's all I can say.
And you can add points to armor. So everybody starts with an armor of 10. Again, we already talked about this being a loot-based game. I'm sure that somewhere in here you will find a piece of leather armor that's going to add bonuses to your armor, or plate mail that's going to add bonuses to your armor. It's got to be in here. Like, it's just, you know what I mean?
It is there. It is there. It's all there. Some of them you get in, magical armor, magical shields, gauntlets, helmets, different things that are going to increase your armor under certain abilities. But you definitely want to spend a point or two in armor. I've learned the hard way that a low armor
they're not good, eh?
not good.
And then you can choose your 4 points. Your basic work that's your bare hands, your raw wits. It can be very useful in unpredictable perils. I feel like this is Savage Worlds unskilled, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, everything you do is a D4.
Yeah, weapons
This
damage.
is why you put points either because of loot or because of your when you're building your stats. You put those points into basic effort because everything that you do is going to have to do basic work. If you investigate a murder and you have to interview someone, the intimidation roll, basic work. The investigation roll, basic work. The streetwise roll, basic work. And if a lot of the things, it's just like combat. All of your weapons do a D6 damage. If you don't put any points in your weapons damage and you get into combat, you're gonna be hating it if you need to do extra points of damage faster or quicker, because the best that you can do is D6 with a regular sword, a spear, a bow. They all have the same weapons damage of D6. There's no 3D6 or 2D4 or 5D8, 4D12, none of that. Everything just gets a D6. And if you're not spending those points to make those bonuses higher, it's just going to take you longer to be able to accomplish some of the tasks. Since a lot of the things that Hankerin has put into the system to put timers on everything that you do, you want to get everything done quickly and efficiently in order to be successful at the task.
So you've got your basic work, that's bare hands. You've got your weapon damage, sword, spears, bows, axes. Magic, that's any kind of magic that you do. And then the last one is ultimate. If you roll a 20, you get the ultimate. And those are the 4 deals. I do like how he's incorporated the uses of different dice. Like in Dungeons and Dragons, it's only the 20. Yeah. In this game, it's a lot of 20, but these dice are important as well, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. They vary on the task that you're trying to do, right? And it's really neat how he incorporates loot into adding bonuses into different dice.
And that gives see, that's why I think this is fantastic, because D&D, everybody's after the loot, and this game, loot makes your character, which is super cool. Step 4 is choose your gear. So you've got as part of your hero, you want to select your equipment, so you choose all your efforts and blah blah blah. But then you get each character sheet includes a section for starter loot and starting equipment. And so you can choose one starter loot item, which is very cool, because I'm not going to go through them because, this is all like copyrighted stuff, but there's some cool stuff in here that give you bonuses directly to your skills. So you can use this. I'm just going to tell one of them because I don't think I'll get in shizzle for that. But say the Berserker ring that gives you +3 to ultimate effort. Maybe you take that on your Barbarian or something like that, right?
Sure.
The next thing is
when you roll that crit, when you roll that 20 on your attempt, you're going to get a D12 to add to that weapon damage. So you're going to roll the weapon damage of D6 and the D12 together. But because you have the Berserker ring, you get to add 3 to that total. So there's a good chance you could roll up to 20 points in one hit with the Barbarian. And that's what you want a Barbarian to be able to do.
And every character starts with one piece of starter loot that you get to choose. And every one of these pieces will affect you in some way. There's ones that will increase every one of your attributes, like your strength, dexterity, and stuff like that. So you get that right away to help increase your character. Starting weapons, you choose up to 3. There's going to be bad guys, it says. You're going to have to smash them and whatnot. There it tells you, so there's Alfheim weapons and there's warp shell weapons. Alfheim is the
fantasy world and one's a sci-fi world. Yeah, you're going to get laser weapons and plasma grenades in one, and you're going to get pole arms and axes and hammers in the other. A lot of the times you can mix and match the weapons and make them, like they say, file off the serial numbers and use the mechanics to have them do something different. Laser rifle in warp shell can be a juiced up crossbow in Alfheim. And you can swap those back and forth. I've done that a lot in my game and just kind of made it up as I go. And no one even knows the difference. You can't tell because the mechanics are so well balanced.
Yeah. And so the third part, or the next part, is starting equipment. I should try and differentiate the difference between starting loot and starting equipment. Everybody starts with a magic item. In this one, that's what the loot is. The starting equipment is just your stuff, whether you got a spell book or some kind of tools or something like that, or you can actually even choose money and stuff like that. And each one of these is going to give you the ability to increase something. And that's cool. So you get all that. So
yeah, then but your starting equipment is going to be the opposite. It's going to give you bonuses to all of the attempts and all of the tasks that you're trying to do, whether it's protecting yourself with a shield, whether it's rope and hook to help do those climbing tests. A spell book might give you a bonus to your intelligence, common armor, all kinds of other stuff that you can get that'll help you as you go through the the journeys and adventures that you're going to make. And they're all semi-permanent unless they say otherwise. They last for as long as you have them. And there are items, like a shield. It can get torn from your hands or drop down a cliff or broken by a big giant ogre brute's axe or something. All that stuff is pertinent to the story, and that's key to what's going on here. The loot is only accents the story of your character. It doesn't make or break you, so to speak.
Yeah, there's weapon tags. So he's done the same thing with weapons. They're all summarized, whether it's large, heavy, concealable. So there's tags applied to the weapons, which help you understand how you can use it. Like, you're not going to walk around with a greatsword and think that you can sheath it or hide it or something like that. Like, there's tags put on these things to let you know what you can and can't do with these things. It says a shield is the only thing that takes a beating, which is kind of cool. So, I mean, if your shield's out there, maybe you want to put a timer on it or something like that. And after 10 whacks or whatever, it blows up. I'm sure you get more than 10 out of it, right?
After a certain amount of weapon effort that's done to it, it falls apart or is no longer, it's useless to you. It's taking too much damage.
Two interesting things here. Spells are loot.
Yep.
How does
spells or powers that you have, whether it's psionic, whether it's clerical, druidic, or arcane or otherwise. My character was playing a psionic character, and he had like a telekinesis, and I would make an intelligence roll every time I wanted to use the power. If the intelligence roll was successful or high enough against the target of the room or the target of the encounter, my power would work. I would roll either like, say I want to fire a telekinetic bolt and push the enemy back, or hit him with a telekinetic bolt at range. I would do weapon damage or magic damage because it's considered a magical attack. And I would use that. I would make the roll against the armor class of the armor of the character, the armor of the door, whatever that may be. And that power, I could select different types of powers based off of psionics because that's where my character was going, or magical effects or clerical effects. It just depends on what your character class allows you to do, but it's all loot. You find it in spell books, in scrolls, in runes, in cubes, and boxes, and tubes with writing on it that you can decipher and find out that that's a magical spell that you can use.
And right back to the attempts and effort. If you find it mid-combat, even if it's mid-combat, you want to learn that spell. That was one of the neat things. He's like, these runes sort of reach out to you and tell you what it can do, and you get the idea that there's some kind of grasping vine. So he's kind of half told you what it is.
Sure, and he tells you make an intelligent roll to see if you learn that spell. And if you failed, you're going to try to take some time to read it next round, or maybe spend more time studying it. Or, you can learn it. It's a very difficult spell. It's a hard spell. You're going to have to give me a hard intelligence roll to figure that out. Or the opposite. Maybe it's a simple scroll written in your language that's a low-level, light, not so powerful spell. It'll be an easy intelligence roll.
Yeah, same premise too, right? It can be a 1-heart spell, a 2-heart spell, and if you decide to stop everything mid-battle and sit down and read this spell, it's so cool because it can unlike D&D where you just make an attempt and if you succeed you do it. This could take literally 1 to 5 rounds plus. It just depends on how well you roll, and it adds that extra mechanical element to it that just makes you sit back and say, that's fucking genius.
It is genius.
I haven't got to this crafting stuff, build, craft, and enhance, so you can do crafting and stuff in here too?
Oh yeah. So anytime you want to be able to craft gear, craft weapons, it's just a simple effort system. You just double the effort output and you get a +3 bonus to specific use to improve the durability. So
very simple.
You can make a hammer stronger, make a longbow shoot farther. You just have to double the amount of effort that you need to be able to do to use it.
Coolness.
He makes it real simple. And I think he's going to talk about this a little more in further editions as he refines the game. Because I wouldn't say this is a beta version, but this is his notes that he's put together so far, and we're slowly all playing the games and giving him ideas, and we're all bouncing off each other and kind of talking about that. And I think he's going to build off of crafting and enhancing a little more next time, hopefully. If not,
so the weapons, the weapons of Alfheim are basically an age of steel and wood. So you've got your basic fantasy weapons. I don't need to say anymore.
Daggers to crossbows, halberds to staffs. Yep.
Yeah. Nothing.
They all do the same damage.
Nothing needs to be said about it. It's just fantasy weapons. The weapons of Warp Shell.
There is something to be said about it because, for example, a dagger, he has weapon tags at the end of it.
Yes,
An example of a weapon tag is thrown. That's kind of obvious. You can throw a dagger. So those tags at the end, they mean something. They mean something descriptively in the game. They sometimes, but not always, give you clues, bonuses, benefits to different types of things that you can do with that weapon.
Yep, the tags on dagger are concealed, fast, piercing, and thrown. So that kind of in a nutshell, in 4 simple words, has told you exactly what you can do with that. Yes, you can hide it. It's a very fast weapon. It does piercing damage. So if you're going to use it against something like, see, right away I'm thinking skeletons and D&D, piercing is going to do half damage. If you had a mace, you know, so just that piercing tells me something because I'm an old school D&D'er, and thrown. Unlike other weapons, you're not going to throw certain things. So those tags come in super handy. Very, very handy. The weapons of Warp Shell are the same thing. He's different rifles, laser beams. Some of them have laser swords and stuff like. There's a whole bunch of stuff in here and an explanation. But again, it's the kind of thing that you leave it up to your imagination. This whole ICRPG is built on the premise of have a conversation with your DM, GM.
Story first. Describe what you want to do. Describe your character. Describe your weapons. Describe your attempt. Describe the monster. Describe your actions. All that stuff is about the story, because without the story, it's not a game.
Yeah. The last step is finishing your sheet. So now that you've got some gear and you've applied your 6 points in bonuses, in ICRPG, hit points are portrayed as hearts. So each heart represents 10 points.
You get 1 heart.
All characters start with just 1.
10 points. That's it.
Yeah.
Everyone gets 10 points.
That heart premise is very cool because most, like D&D has levels, Savage Worlds has levels as well, every 5 points, but it's not really a number that you attach. You just, you move up in ranks, kind of a deal. The simplicity of the heart system is very cool because if as a dungeon master, you don't, I've explained this when I did what I love about Savage Worlds is creating monsters on the fly at the top of my head. All I have to know is D6, D6, D6. Everything was a D6 and I could create a monster because I'm just telling a story and rolling a die. The mechanics and stuff like that. If you want to make it a little harder,
you make it a D8, D8.
Yeah. And that premise applies to this with the hearts. If I want that monster to be easy, it's a 1 heart. If I want it to be a little harder, it's a 2, 3, 4, or 5 heart. Right? So you could technically,
you don't have any hit points right off the bat. How much that is? A 3 heart monster is going to be 30 hit points. That's going to be hard for 4 characters to be able to fight that down, to do that much damage in a couple of turns without taking some serious hits because they only got 10.
And all of this is just starter information. Like this book is built on the idea that you're starting your first game with like a low level guy and you get 1 heart. I'm saying we're starting at mid-level range, and I'm going to give you guys 3 or 4 hearts, and I'm going to give you an extra piece of loot, and I'm going to give you a milestone or 2 right out of the gate, and we're going to start this game at mid-level, and you're going to fight 3, 4 heart monsters throughout the whole thing. It's just that simple. Choose a class, choose your bioform, and then there's this epiphany edit. You'll see concepts, blah, 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 the fog here. It's super easy. Okay, so... Alfheim Classes, you've got the Guardian, which is your tank. You've got the Blade, which is your like your deadly assassin kind of a guy. The Shadow is the stealthy kind of guy. Every one of these classes too comes with some recommended gear and a list of 5 or 6 milestone rewards. The Shadow is the stealth guy. He gets like a thief's hood. So stealth rolls are always easy. You see how loot can just, a simple thief's hood changes the target number for stealth into easy all the time. Very cool. That's how loot can affect this game. The boots, if you're rolling stealth, you only fail on only on a 1 do you fail. Cool things like that. There's an archer class. A priest, a scout, a mage, a commander is like the sergeant or the commander of an army or armies kind of a thing. So they have this charisma presence and stuff. And what is a wildling? Is like your druidic class and stuff like that. And then you have
wildling. They're a lot of fun to play. You can do a lot of everything with the wildling.
Yeah, it doesn't need
it. Unique to Alfheim, I think.
Yeah, and it doesn't need an exorbitant amount of explanation to, for you guys to get what this is. If you've played D&D, you get what this is. The bioforms, they're just the races. You can be elf, dwarf, small folk. This is very cool. The small folk are basically, I guess, any kind of like little human, your halflings and whatever. They're just called small folks. Then you have your common humans. They get every race also gets things like elf, very D&D-ish, gets dexterity, intelligence bonuses, dwarves, constitution, charisma. Then you've got this is a really cool one, the hill folk. You can play like almost like an 8-foot tall giant right out of the gate.
Big people.
Hill folk, guardian guy, super easy, super simplistic, right? And that's it for Alfheim. Warp Shell is very similar. Your tank, however, is going to be a giant-ass robot. The guns, the Ronin
Android,
is what it's called.
That cyborg, all that other stuff.
Yeah, the Ronin is guns, knives, grenades, grapple hooks, night vision, laser drones. I'm not sure what the Ronin is. That what it is? Okay, so sort of like a bit of a DPS class.
Yes.
Okay, cool. The Ghost is your stealth class. The Gunner is obviously like the Archer. The Zurin is the Priest. The Blip is like a a telekinetic kind of a thing, like a spellcasting kind of. I'm not sure.
Actually, he's more of a tech, like an engineer or power armor kind of guy. He would have all the special abilities like boots, jump jets, claws, power armor, weapons, blaster pistols. He's all the high tech dude.
Yeah, Psyker Tech has brought incredible speed to the heroes of Warp Shell. The master of this art is the Blip. The mobility makes them perfect scouts. They're a scouting class. There you go, for exploring. Then you've got the Fragment.
Those are the spellcasting class.
Yeah, and Titans. Now, what are the Titans here?
Titans are like the big, they're like the big fighters, the ones who are chosen to protect the races and to be the main paladins, the ones, the protectors of the universe, so to speak.
Very cool. So they're very similar to the commander class is I see kind of where he's fit this in. And then lastly, you've got the outsider, which is basically if you want to make a race of goop or blobs or bloops or whatever, that's who you're going to be. You're the outsider guy.
Yep. The wildling, they get all the crazy different rewards and the very unique powers and abilities.
The Warp Shell bioforms are mecha, so you could be a robot, a reptoid, a psyker, which is like, they look like the little grayskin aliens.
Yeah.
Geno, so those are the humans, and Zill. These creatures are bio-generated microgravity field something or other, chitinous body deals.
Yeah, they can kind of separate their body parts and stuff, and they're held together by their own little microgravity system. Their limbs and their bodies are not connected together like ours are. They kind of float in space next to them. They can, they can't float very far or anything, but they generate their own gravity field, and their body components are made up of their skeleton on the outside, kind of like insect.
Yeah,
it's kind of his one of a kind warp shell or bioform for warp shell. That's the Zill. It gets a +1 constitution bonus and some natural armor. I think it's immune to vacuum. So there's all kinds of stuff that go with that. But it's cool because in all the bioforms that he talks about, all the races that's what he calls bioforms. They're like these 2 or 3 little sentences and +1 intelligence, +1 dexterity. That's it. I mean, it's really, really simple. That's the entire entry for the bioform. And the simplicity just absolutely blows me away sometimes.
And
so
what's
so little words,
right? And sadly, we're 43 pages into this PDF in an hour and a half. How many pages are we into Savage Rifter podcast? We're 30 something.
Yeah, 30, 40 pages. Yeah.
So after character creation, we're done. We're putting a pin in this episode, but there's just a couple of things that I just want to talk to Victor about, because after character creation, it goes into trials, which is kind of like little mini adventures. How do you sit down and play it a little bit and get the feel for it? That's what these trials are. But after that, it goes to the world primers. And like I was saying, so you've got the Alfheim, which is your fantasy, and you've got Warp Shell. So he spends a bunch of time talking about Alfheim and giving you some some backstory and stuff like that into it. And I think on another episode, I would like to pick it up because these are the important parts for a GM. I've made comments before how there's so much stuff coming out for Savage Worlds. There's so many different settings. And for a DM, you always have to frickin' read them and try and impart that to your players. Whereas the players don't have to read it. They just sit down with their characters and I got to tell them what's going on in the world. And that's the part of the story that I think that they should really make audiobooks for Savage Worlds. Just, you know what I mean? So that I could sit down and listen to it. So this episode,
for sure, so you can sit there and listen to them while you're driving, while you're working, while you're doing all the stuff you need to do.
And yeah, that's how YouTube needs to put a feature in where I can just export audio and save it to my whatchamacallit, because that's how I listened to the Red Sword. I can't sit down.
You don't know about YouTube Music? That's what it does.
I'm from Canada. I don't think I have it.
Shut up.
I don't. I'll look into it, but I don't think so. I use a few other features.
Look up on the Android. I'm assuming you have an Android phone.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Look up YouTube Music.
Okay, I will.
Maybe you can't because you're outside the U.S. But yeah, there's this app called YouTube Music, and it's made by Google, and it allows you to download the audio from the video streams without the video. So you can just flick a switch, it'll stream the audio to you, and it won't stream all the video to you at whatever quality you want. And you can even download all of those in a playlist.
Oh, somebody was talking about that. Okay. So this episode is officially.
Customize that. Try.
I'll look into it. Yep. So this episode is officially done. Now is the part where I'm just going to take a minute or two to ask a couple of questions. Or maybe just one, because it's probably it's the main thing that I find. We've been talking repeatedly about the idea that this game plays in sort of a continual combat turn-based feel, and I love it. Yeah. I notice that hankering.
You can do that anywhere.
Yes, you can. That's the cool part about this one. See, now you're going to get me going here again. Okay, so here's my question.
Ask your question.
Hankerin inside Red Sword was continually flipping this D4 dice, like he was rolling it, and so
timer die.
Explain it to me.
Yeah, you need to look up timers under the GM section of ICRPG. It's called Timers, Threats, and Treats. In my real book, it's page 73, but I'm not sure which one it is in the digital version.
Okay.
I can look up the digital version as I'm in it.
Yeah, I closed my digital version down because I don't want to keep looking at it, or I know we're going to keep talking about it. But
Game Mastery, Timers, Threats, and Treats. It is page 76, and there's a section on the left column that says Timers. So get started by inventing some inevitable danger or event. The impending danger can be unknown or out in the open. It's up to you on how you want to present it to your players. Roll a d4 and place it in view. On the GM's turn, reduce it by 1. When it counts to 0, something happens. The die is also known as the Suspense Die. You can consider ticking your timer down early when a roll is failed or something happens that accelerates the impending doom. The example that he gives in the list: in 1 to 4 rounds, molten lava will fill the room. In 1 to 4 rounds, the insect swarm will descend in a flash. In 1 to 4 rounds, something terrible will happen. Tell the players something terrible is going to happen. Tell the players molten lava will fill the room. That's the point of the D4. You create a timer of impending doom. Sometimes it's a poison gas. Sometimes it's a monster transforms into a worse monster. Whatever is going to happen, that sense of suspense and dread that you're building up over those couple of turns forces the players to act. So your turns don't take 15 rounds to complete. And there's been many times, and you saw it in the video, he'll roll the D4 and it's a 1. And that's when the players go, oh shit, I need to fire that fireball now, not 3 rounds from now. And it forces them to become active and engaged in the game, because they know when you get down to that timer, something bad's going to happen and you're not going to like it. What's even better is he gave an example today in a Dark Sun game of an encounter that he wanted to say to kickstart your game. The black dragon comes out from over the desert, sprays heat instead of a fire out of his mouth. He sprays heat, and then he rolls a D4. He tells the players what that D4 is for, because every time he rolls a D4, his players already know, oh shit, what's that for? They're going to ask. So he tells them, you have that many rounds before the dragon flies back around and does that again.
Okay. I got you, and I kind of understand the premise. And I was sort of watching it, but he was doing different things with it all the time. And when I'm listening to it and not watching it, I wasn't really getting the grasp of how many times he actually did that. So every time he rolls that D4 and it goes around the entire table, so you have your turns. Every player, he clicks it down once.
Every time the GM goes. Every time the GM goes, you reduce it by 1, unless someone rolls a 1 or really screws up or sets the bomb off or happens to hit the monster in just the right spot. Then you turn it down by 1 again. Sometimes you can have it turned down more than once in one turn. It just depends on how you want to handle that.
Yeah, that's ultimately cool. So there's always something happening or going to happen or about to happen. You just got out of battle. I'm going to roll this, and now we're in hours. And even though that timer is at 4, or let's say that timer's at 1,
before that dragon comes back again,
or the next goblin wave comes
4 days before the orcs chase you down.
Yeah, I gotcha. That is a cool freaking feature. I really love
any game. I've used it in Savage Rifts ever since I heard about it. And holy crap, you want to talk about making your game move fast. When the characters see you break out a D4 and you put it on the table, and they see you run it, what's that for? That's a timer. What's it counting? Something bad's going to happen when that hits 1 or 0.
I like that.
And they don't want to know. I mean, they're okay. Screw it. We're running, or we're going to fight this, or we're going to kill this thing, or we're going to take what we need and just get right down to the nitty gritties. No exploring, looking, poking, rounding, throwing, waiting, delaying all this other BS. Nope. You got 3 rounds. Go.
Very cool. No, that's fantastic. And so to wrap all of this up, I'm assuming it's called Index Card RPG, and I did sort of read this at the beginning because it comes with not only the stories in it, but it has a volume of cards, 100 cards. The first volume is fantasy. The second 100 cards that you could buy as a separate edition is also fantasy. And the third one is all sci-fi, and they're just images on index cards.
Sure. The first 2 are Alfheim, and the last one is Warp Shell.
Gotcha.
Almost exclusively.
But
you can mix them up as much as you need or however you need. If you draw a laser cannon on one, just tell the players, pretend it's a giant, ballista at the end of the hallway, and it's shooting down. I mean, use your imagination, right? But the reason it's called Index Card Role-Playing Game is there's a mechanic that he has in the system, and it's somewhere in the GM's things, but there's a map. There's this
flow
9
chart
cards that you can draw, and this chart, and each one that you draw is an encounter area. You can choose 1 card, 2 cards, 3 cards, depending on how complicated and how hard you want to make the encounter. So, for example, the first card you pull out, and it's the door of a dungeon. Oh, you begin at the beginning of a dark, tall black door, and you make up that as you go. It's just inspiration for you to build that encounter. The next card you can build is a beholder. Maybe the next encounter they have is they encounter the beholder, and they're no way, shape, or form going to take it on. But maybe it's just a story moment. Maybe it's not a combat moment, unless they get crazy and decide to,
murder hobos.
The beholder's going to win. You're the GM, right?
Yeah.
And the next one, you decide to draw 2 cards, and one's a trap and one's a trap, and then you're like, oh, now they're chasing the beholder through his lair, and he has it trapped, so now they've got to get through these 2 different traps, and so on and so forth. And you build the story based off those random index cards. Even better, you can use those index cards to lay out in front of your players on the table. If you don't have a lot of miniatures and a lot of wargaming scenery and all kinds of minis, just break out your little counters and use those as rooms, or use those as encounter areas, and use theater of the mind, and just to give them an idea of what's happening around them. Use some of the cards to describe some of the monsters, the creatures, the people, and the environment, and the traps and other things that they're finding along the way.
Yes.
Just how you do it in really shorthand, just like D&D, but smaller.
So I'm gonna flap my cards so you can hear them.
Oh yeah, don't make me flap mine. I have about 200 sitting in a stack right here next to my book.
This is the first of 3. These cards are how it works. Basically, when you buy your core set, I think they come with a core set. I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on this. But volume 1 is you print them on cardstock. They're built just so you make 2 cuts. He simplified the system. It's a cut down the middle and a cut down the middle.
Yep, quarter of the page.
And you get this cool little hankering little, I just want to call it like a niblet of art. He's by no means a masterful artist, but he's good enough and has.
Don't let that fool you. Don't let his little scribbles fool you.
Yeah.
He is a very talented individual that artistically he has mastered his style, quote unquote. He is a very good Sharpie artist. You know, I mean, I say that in the most loving terms I could give as an artist, because I've been to art school. I know that whole, I can draw a little or whatever, but the fact that he does them so quickly and so neatly, he has mastered his craft, and he has found his style over years and years of developing these little scribbles. He may say they're not really good. Trust me, all those are really good. To get that much information off of a little scribble, some white and some black pen marks.
So you're absolutely correct, and I don't want to belittle his skill or his style. It's very. I think my daughter could draw these pictures. Do you know what I mean? But
good.
But they're still really good. They
are really good. You're right. They're very simple, very easy on the eyes.
Yeah.
But they are done artistically very well.
And
even the littlest things.
So the first one I'm looking at is some kind of a guy holding a bowl, and it's like a Templar or an idol holding a bowl. Could be anything, which is really cool. Now you were so in the index card, volume 1 has a bunch of cards all based on the Alfheim world. Now here's something else that you could take and throw into any world or any game that you're playing is these cards. You get the cards. Now, there is a flow chart, but I was under the impression that because I've seen the videos, and he says you can do it 2 ways. You can rifle through the deck and choose the cards that you want. Like you said, you start with the image of the cave entrance. The next one is going to be like
Find
the picture
the one that fits the story that you're trying to write.
It's the picture of the goblin. And then the next one is a picture of some, a cavern or a door that goes up or down inside of a cave or something like that. So you can choose the images that tell the story that you want to tell. And then as you lay them down in front of your players, this is so freaking genius. There's a city, an image of a city, and that you can place that anywhere on the map, which I love. Like not even on the map, you lay it on the coffee table.
Right.
Yeah. You lay it on the coffee table in a position. You have the cave entrance in another position. There's a space between those two, and you can have some of your people in the city or some of them at the cave entrance. But that space may only be a couple inches on the coffee table, but in game space, it could be a mile or it could be a different continent.
Yeah. The cards are not maps. The cards are not battle maps. The cards are not miniature war game, masterpieces. They're not intended for that. They're intended for theater of the mind to represent the space or the encounter area that it's happening in. The city, for example, is far, a couple miles away, just the distance of the city, but you could have hours and months of adventures and encounters in that city and never use any other card other than a few NPCs and a few magic items that they find. It's just simply to help convey the message to the players.
Yeah, the index
cards can also be used to randomly generate adventures when you're running out of ideas, or the players, as usual, take a left-hand turn and decide to go crazy with it and don't follow the story that you built. So now you got to pull something out of your hat and go, well, whoop, here it is. Oh crap, dragon. Oh, and you throw it down and you go with it.
And it's very cool.
You have to have those tools. Yeah,
because
very cool.
The index card image of the city and the index card of the cave entrance, when you lay them both down, like I said, they could be within a mile, they could be a day's travel away, but that image represents a space in your story. So and the distance between the two of them. Yeah, so you can have some players.
Yeah. Go with it. Yep.
I was just going to say, you can have some players about to enter the cave and others are in town looking for help. Yep. And it just gives your players who are sitting there the idea that they're in two separate places, even though you're in the same game. Now,
yeah, you take the paper mini that fold out that you have and put two of them on one card and put two of them on the other. And now they visually can see the relationship that, or the locations of where they're at, and then you can work with them. Sometimes you can work with the guys in the caves in moments, and you can work with the guys in the city in hours, because they're doing two different things because they were stupid and they split the party.
Never split the party.
Yeah.
You can use the flow chart and predetermine the cards to tell your story. Or one of the most incredible things that I think that you can do with these cards is you can take them anywhere that you want to go. You can shuffle them, and you can hand out maybe 10 cards and just lay them all down on the table. This is sort of how I explained it to Harrison, because I'm not 100% sure. I did tell him that I'm guessing. But what I did was I put everything in Tabletop Simulator. I grabbed the top 10 cards and I flipped them over. I looked at all of them. And then I said, okay, this is going to be our starter card, which was a ham and a bottle of wine and a table. I grabbed it and I set it off to the side, and I left all the other ones out here. Now, all the other ones are elements to the story that I'm going to tell, but we're starting right here. What happens in this bar? You're having some wine. It's a nice night. You're relaxing at this inn. You're having some good food. You're hanging out with friends. And there was a flaming skull was one of the other pictures. And I said to him, I'm like, as you glance over at the fire after a couple of drinks, you don't know if it's your eyes or the alcohol, but the fire seems to have this skull-like image embedded into it, and you can't shake it. And so that's when I'd be like, what are you going to do? And then Harrison would be like, oh, I'm going to go check out the fire and, see if I rub my eyes or do whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And then and then go to the next player. And I'll, tell him the story. You see Harrison rubbing his eyes and then it's like I didn't have to have anything thunk up. I just threw the cards down and looked at him and said, hey, I'm going to tell this story. And that's friggin' amazeballs.
Yeah,
it's love it.
Absolutely amazing how much you can get out of one card when you begin to have that interactive discussion on what is this card about and where are we going from it. You take a character, you take a location, you take the task at hand, and you just put A, B, and C together. And the next thing you know, you're off to the races. And an hour later, you're both sitting there cheering each other, going, "Damn, I've played more gaming in 1 hour than I've played with 4 or 5 hours in D&D."
I'm really interested to see how this is going to pan out inside my Gartar world, because it's a set story.
Be prepared. You're going to go through the entire story very quickly.
I hope not.
Quicker than you think it is.
But that's okay. If it happens, it happens. It's all built inside of Tabletop Simulator. I'll get it all set up and have it.
I want a report on Sunday night. I want to hear how it went. You need to tell me everything.
Yeah, I'll record the audio.
Oh my freaking God, this is amazing.
I will record the audio for that, and I will also throw that out as part of the Murder Hobo show. And and then we will discuss. But as far as that goes, we're an hour and 45. I'm going to have to cut this down. And thanks everybody for listening. This is just a little side index card RPG thing that I picked up a little while ago and started reading it. I think it's really cool. And me and Victor are going to discuss it a little bit in between our Savage Rifters podcasts.
Because we don't have anything else to do.
No, because when we get together, we end up talking like little schoolgirls, like lost cousins that haven't seen each other. What time did we start hanging out? 7? It's 10:30. So we've been talking 7-ish. Games for 3.5 hours.
Yeah, we haven't even hit the ice tip yet. The tip
right?
of the iceberg. I mean, there's hundreds of hours left in ICRPG. There's thousands of hours left in Savage Rifts.
It's one of the best parts about role-playing games is how it can bring two absolute strangers. I didn't know Victor last year, and it's brought us together, and we're just sitting here like two old chums talking about stuff.
Yeah,
crazy.
Two old ladies,
right?
Smoking cigars and drinking wine on the side of the house.
The Murder Hobo Show is not affiliated with or endorsed by any companies mentioned on this show. Any of the products mentioned on our show or appear on our website are the property and copyright of their respected owners. All items are used under fair use and for educational and review purposes. All other items are the intellectual property of the Murder Hobo Show, copyright 2017, all rights reserved.